He spent 8 years shielding the president. But the battle that broke him was fought at home. The unbelievable true story of love over law.
A sleek, black car pulled up to the Providence Municipal Court on a chilly Tuesday morning. The man who emerged, 61-year-old Michael Thompson, moved with the deliberate precision of someone whose job was to shield global dignitaries from harm. He projected the commanding presence of a federal agent. However, what he was poised to disclose inside that courtroom was about to captivate everyone. Before proceeding with this powerful account, I urge you to subscribe to the channel right now, as we are quickly approaching 10,000 subscribers and 97% of viewers aren't subscribed yet. You're watching Judge Stories. Also, please let me know in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from: New York, London, Tokyo, Brazil? This narrative needs to reach every corner of the globe to showcase the breadth of Judge Caprio's compassionate legacy. It was a typical Tuesday morning, October 15, 2022, and the Providence Municipal Court was following its routine. Judge Frank Caprio, then 80, had handled the usual stream of traffic infractions and minor offenses. The waiting area was filled with the familiar mix of nervous drivers and commuters hoping the judge's renowned empathy would apply to their cases. At 9:47 a.m., when Michael Thompson walked into the room, the energy subtly shifted. He was a silver-haired man in his early 60s, 6 feet tall, with a posture that spoke of rigorous federal training. His dark suit was immaculate, his shoes polished to a mirror shine, and he moved with the fluid, hyper-aware vigilance of someone who had spent years searching crowds for threats. But it was not his polished appearance that drew Judge Caprio's eye, it was the subtle, ingrained behaviors. Michael's eyes sweeping the entry points, the strategic position he chose for clear sight lines, and the unconscious way he kept his hands ready. These were the reflexes of an executive protection specialist. Other defendants noticed him too, murmuring, "Looks like Secret Service," or, "Probably federal agent." Yet, Michael Thompson sat composed, hands folded, focusing respectfully on the proceedings, displaying none of the nervousness that afflicted everyone else. Court reporter Margaret Walsh, who had documented Judge Caprio's hearings for 22 years, made a note about the defendant's unusual self-control, a stark contrast to the typical fidgeting and stress. When the case of the state of Rhode Island versus Michael was called at 10:15 a.m., Judge Caprio began his routine. "Please state your name for the record." "Michael Anthony Thompson, Your Honor," he responded. His voice carried the steady, clear authority of someone accustomed to speaking under pressure, with a slight Texas accent hinting at Southern origins despite his obvious federal background. "Mr. Thompson, according to the citation, you were driving 52 miles per hour in a 25 miles per hour school zone on September 28 at approximately 3:15 p.m. How do you plead?" "Guilty, Your Honor," Michael said immediately. "I was speeding and I accept full responsibility for my actions." His direct admission surprised some in the gallery, who might have expected a man of his clear professional background to challenge the charge. Judge Caprio, however, recognized a man who embraced accountability. "Mr. Thompson, can you explain the circumstances that led to this violation?" Michael paused for the first time, and the judge saw a flicker of controlled anguish cross his face. "Your Honor, I was rushing to Rhode Island Hospital to reach my wife. I had just received a call from her oncologist indicating a critical decline in her cancer treatment that required my immediate presence." This is the pivotal point of the story. If you find this as compelling as I do, please hit the like button now so we can share these incredible moments with more people. The courtroom fell silent. This was not a standard traffic case. This was a husband racing to his seriously ill wife. Judge Caprio leaned in. "Mr. Thompson, I sense there's more to your story. Your demeanor suggests military or federal service. Is that correct?" Michael's jaw subtly tightened, a sign of deep, contained emotion. "Yes, Your Honor. I served as the personal driver and close protection officer for President George W. Bush for 8 years, from 2000 to 2008. The revelation stunned the courtroom. George W. Bush, the 43rd president who led the nation through 9/11 and 2 wars, had been protected by the man now standing before them for a traffic ticket. Everyone realized they were witnessing an extraordinary moment. Judge Caprio's eyes widened in recognition and awe. "Mr. Thompson," the judge said, his voice now imbued with deep respect, "when you say you served as President Bush's driver and protection officer, what exactly did that entail during those critical years?" "I was part of his personal security detail, responsible for secure transportation, route planning, and close protection during public events, travel, and residential security. This included Air Force One movements, foreign dignitary meetings, and high-threat operations following the September 11th attacks. The gallery absorbed the scale of his service in astonished silence. Judge Caprio grappled with the profound contrast between Michael's distinguished past and his current situation. Mr. Thompson, serving President Bush during the post-9/11 era must have been immensely demanding. Those were some of the most dangerous years for presidential security. Yes, Your Honor. Constant threat assessments, 18-hour days, extensive travel, and multiple assassination attempts the public never knew about. It was the honor of my lifetime, but it demanded total commitment. Everything else in life had to be secondary to the president's safety. The judge began to understand the deeper context. You mentioned racing to the hospital during a critical moment in your wife's treatment. How long has she been battling cancer? Michael's controlled expression cracked, revealing the pain he had carried for years. Your Honor, my wife Sarah was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in 2009, 1 year after I left my position with President Bush. The doctors recommended aggressive treatment and substantial family support. The timing was devastating. Why did you leave your position with the president? Michael remained silent for a long moment, visibly weighing how much personal detail to share. When he spoke, his voice conveyed the gravity of a life-altering choice. Your Honor, my wife supported my career for 25 years. She tolerated the long hours, the constant travel, and the security restrictions. When she was diagnosed, I realized she had sacrificed her own needs for my career for decades. It was time for me to sacrifice for her. I could protect the president, but I couldn't protect my wife from cancer. I knew the only way to help was to be fully present throughout her treatment. Judge Caprio understood. Michael Thompson had voluntarily walked away from a career that promised lucrative private sector opportunities to care for his ill wife, a move that spoke of immense marital dedication but likely came with severe financial strain. How has your wife's condition progressed since 2009? Michael's face showed the full emotional toll of 15 years. She fought bravely, Your Honor. Multiple chemotherapy and radiation treatments, experimental therapies, and clinical trials. We had periods of remission followed by recurrence. Some years were hopeful, others terrifying. The emotional and financial toll has been overwhelming. The judge realized he was looking at a man who had spent 15 years watching his beloved wife slowly succumb to a terminal illness while struggling to afford her medical costs. Mr. Thompson, you mentioned speeding because of a critical development. Can you tell me what happened on September 28th? Michael took a deep breath, choosing to share one of the most agonizing moments of his life with the court. Your Honor, my wife was on an experimental immunotherapy trial we hoped would extend her life. On September 28th, I was working my second job as a security guard at a local mall when I received the call from Dr. Richardson. He told me the treatment had failed, and Sarah's cancer had spread aggressively. He said I needed to get to Rhode Island Hospital immediately because they were moving her to hospice care. The courtroom fell silent again, save for the sound of muffled crying. Your Honor, the doctor told me Sarah might only have days or weeks left and she was asking for me. After 15 years of fighting, we were facing the end and I wasn't there. Judge Caprio saw the cruel irony. Michael Thompson, who was ready to die protecting the president, was powerless to save the woman he loved most. Mr. Thompson, when you received that call, what went through your mind? Terror, Your Honor. Absolute terror mixed with rage at my helplessness. 8 years I spent ready to take a bullet for President Bush, yet nothing prepared me for losing Sarah, or the possibility she might die alone while I was working at a mall food court to pay for her drugs. I got in my car and drove as fast as I could because every minute was the difference between being with my wife when she needed me most and missing our final conversation. I had missed too many important moments because of work. I wasn't going to miss telling her I loved her one last time. Judge Caprio understood that Michael Thompson represented a profound story of love and sacrifice. This man protected the free world's leader, but his most significant battle was the one he couldn't win at home. Mr. Thompson, when you arrived at the hospital, was your wife? She was alive, Your Honor. Weak and scared, but alive. The hospice team was preparing her and she was waiting for me. We were able to spend 3 days together talking about our lives and saying goodbye properly. Judge Caprio felt his own eyes sting with tears. And your wife's current condition? She passed away on October 2nd, Your Honor, 13 days ago. The funeral was last week. The courtroom erupted in quiet sobs. The judge realized he was looking at a man who had just buried his wife of 3 decades and was now facing a citation for racing to her side in her final moments. Mr. Thompson, Judge Caprio said deliberately, standing up from his bench in an unprecedented show of respect. In 40 years on this bench, I have never seen a case that so perfectly illustrates the conflict between legal technicalities and human necessity. He walked around his bench to address Michael directly, speaking to him as one human being to another. You spent 8 years ready to die for your country. You spent the next 15 years watching the woman you loved die slowly while working multiple jobs to cover her medical costs. And then you were cited for speeding while racing to say goodbye to her before she passed. Michael Thompson finally broke down, the grief of weeks pouring out in tears. Tears not just of loss, but of profound relief that someone understood the impossible situation he faced. The judge waited for him to compose himself. Mr. Thompson, regarding the speeding violation that brought you to my courtroom, all charges are dismissed. All fines are waived. This citation is being removed from your record. The courtroom erupted in spontaneous applause. But Judge Caprio continued, furthermore, I want you to know that your choice to prioritize your wife's final days over legal technicalities represents the best of marriage and commitment. You chose love over law, presence over protocol. Turning to the gallery, he concluded, we live in a society that claims to value family, yet often creates systems that punish people for honoring those commitments when it matters most. Michael Thompson should not have received a speeding ticket for racing to be with his dying wife. The applause continued, and Judge Caprio offered a final, memorable statement. Mr. Thompson, your service to President Bush was honorable and essential, but your service to your wife during her 15-year battle with cancer was heroic and irreplaceable. You chose to be the husband who showed up when his wife needed him most, even when it cost you everything professionally and financially. 3 months later, Michael returned to the courthouse, not as a defendant, but to thank Judge Caprio and share an important development. Using his security background and small federal pension, he had started a non-profit organization to provide transport for cancer patients who couldn't otherwise afford to get to their treatments. Here is the central lesson of this incredible story. Michael Thompson proved that true heroism isn't always about protecting presidents or stopping assassinations. Sometimes it's about holding your wife's hand during chemotherapy. Sometimes it's about choosing love over a career, even if it leads to financial hardship. Michael Thompson served his country by protecting the president during the most dangerous period in modern American history. But his greatest service was protecting his wife's dignity and ensuring she did not die alone. That is not just heroism, it is love in its purest form. If this story resonated with you, please do 2 things now. First, subscribe to our channel as we continue to document moments that prove our legal system is capable of extraordinary compassion. Second, think about the people in your life who have sacrificed their own dreams to care for a loved one. Sometimes the most vital protection we can provide isn't for world leaders, but for the people we promise to love in sickness and in health. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next incredible courtroom story.